How can I sound more fluent and confident in English? It's a question that I've been asked more times than I can count by viewers of my live streams, where I answer 20 to 30 questions on any given night. For my fans, I have no script, I just go live and I answer. I've been asked this by my coworkers when I presented to the government of Vancouver and convinced them to let Uber operate there. And I was asked this by my classmates in my high school business case competition, where I was the youngest ever to win first in my country. I say this not to brag, but to make a point. Becoming fluent and confident in English is simple. I practiced hard enough that speaking fluently and confidently became my default communication style. But if you ask me to speak fluently in Chinese, well, I'm lost. 10 years ago, I was an international student at Peking University, 就是在北大的光华学院. I was delivering a presentation in Chinese with my teammate. I remember my professor was Chinese, and my professor asked me a question that I just could not answer. Like I froze. Afterwards, my classmate asked me, John, why didn't you say anything? We'd already prepared for that question. We're ready to go. The reason that I froze is because I was translating my English answer to Chinese and worrying the whole time about using the wrong words, nervous about my communication. So when the time actually came for me to speak up, my brain was overwhelmed and I could only mumble something in Chinese and I remember the whole time my cheeks were just burning out of embarrassment. Maybe in the Western workplace, as an ESL, you felt the same things. You might have thought to yourself, I'm just not fast enough to follow what other people are saying, or I'm frozen and I can't speak up, or I just feel so much dumber when I speak English. Well, the good news is your feelings are actually backed by science. In an influential paper about ESL in the workplace, Stefan Volk and his colleagues wrote the following. This is quoted directly from their study. Non-native speakers will be cognitively depleted faster and more often, which will add to their already high general workload and amplify the detrimental effects of high job strain. These effects include reduced job performance. Basically, in plain English, when we communicate in our second language, our brains work extra hard. So no, your brain isn't slow in your second language. It's overwhelmed. In fact, the psychologist Daniel Kahneman, in his influential book Thinking Fast and Slow, which you might have heard about, he explains that we use two systems to think. System one is fast and intuitive and automatic. It's like when you draw your hand away from a flame, right? It's instinctual. System two is slow and deliberate and analytical. It's like deciding how you should deliver a big presentation to your manager. If you've ever used ChatGPT, you've seen this difference in action, right? Like if you ask GPT a simple question, what is a demon hunter? K-pop demon hunter, which I covered in a previous podcast. GPT will reply instantly because it's relying on system one. But if you ask it, can you analyze the cultural impact of Korean film on the Western world? It switches to thinking mode. And you probably need to go grab a coffee, especially if you're using research mode. That is system two. It is slow, intentional, and very expensive cognitively. Native speakers spend most of their day in system one. They only switch to system two when they need deep reasoning, like for presentations or crucial conversations. But ESL speakers, especially Chinese professionals, tend to do the opposite because you want to sound fast and fluent like native speakers. You want to keep up. And so while keeping up and maintaining your perfect grammar and perfect pronunciation, you learn to rely on system two all the time. If you needed to speak Chinese in the workplace, that would be no problem, right? You wouldn't be thinking nearly as hard about every word that you're saying. And my wife, who is an ESL and who is native Chinese, is a perfect example of this. We both work from home. So she used to find me in the middle of the day, just burst into my office, And she'd be like, John, can you help me read this work message? Or can you make sure that this sentence is perfect in terms of grammar? And eventually ChatGPT came out. So eventually she started sparing me and she started to use GPT instead. But it's the same difference. I'd always ask, why does perfect grammar even matter here? Because the reality is that she was relying on System 2 too much. So it's no wonder that her brain was tired all the time. And chances are you're running into the same issue. So, one thing I want to emphasize is to learn how to switch thinking systems and to be aware of which thinking system that you're using. Anytime before you communicate, get in the habit of asking yourself, does my performance depend on communicating carefully here? If it does, by all means switch to System 2, but be aware that you're using System 2. Slow your words down, think carefully. Don't try to speak fast like System 1. But if your performance does not depend on communicating carefully, then use System 1. Give yourself permission to be imperfect. Use the wrong words, have an accent, whatever. It's better to be fluent with flawed grammar than stuck and silent, right? And if you're honest with yourself, you will realize that 80% of your daily work communication is low stakes. Like, you don't need to be perfect when your stakeholder asks you for a status update. You just need to be present. And the best part about this, when you save your mental energy for the 20% of moments that truly matter, you're going to see your performance in those key moments skyrocket. You can focus on what really makes you persuasive, which is your voice tone, your expressions, your speaking pace, reading the room to see what other people are thinking and how they react to what you say. Chinese speakers, ESL speakers, are notorious for being monotone, for being expressionless, and it's not because you're a bad speaker. It's because you are too dedicated. You're spending too many mental resources on being perfect in System 2, and you're missing all of the other components of communication. But when you can rely less and less on it, your brain is less overwhelmed, then you start to pick up these things. So, you know by now that leaning on System 1 thinking is important. But how do you actually improve your System 1 communication to make it something that you actually feel comfortable and confident using more often? Because nobody wants to speak with terrible grammar and using the wrong words all the time, right? Well, I want to introduce to you a simple daily practice that can improve your workplace English. Of course, the key within here is practice, because System 1 by definition is automatic, and something can only become automatic if you repeat and practice. Take the example of my live streaming. Fans see me jump effortlessly from question to question in live streams. Many fans think that I'm scripted, which I am not. It's impossible to be scripted when there are 20 different people asking you different questions. Many people think that I'm a natural at speaking. But what they don't see is the hundreds of hours that I spent in live streams before that, perfecting my delivery until it became automatic, even under high pressure. In other words, live streaming is a System 2 activity for most people, but thanks to practice, for me, it's usually System 1, automatic. That's why in my own career coaching, I teach a method called 10x Daily Practice. I developed it with a speech therapist who works with Chinese ESL professionals. And here is how we do it. I promise you, it won't take you more than 10 minutes every day, but if you can do it for 30 days, you're going to see a significant improvement. The first step is to select 10 times every day where you're going to spend 30 to 60 seconds trying to speak as clearly as possible in your daily life. You want to set this as a regular schedule. So make it a trigger, because if you don't set a regular schedule, it's going to slip and you're not going to practice. So maybe it's every time you pick up the phone for a phone call, you're going to default to your 10x daily practice. Maybe it's when you have conversations with your coworkers, or when you're in lunch breaks, or every time you go get groceries. Try to incorporate this at some point through your daily life. I know that this sounds intimidating to start. It sounds like a lot of work, but people often overestimate what they can achieve in a week and underestimate what they can achieve in a year. If you make this consistent, you will see more and more of your communication become effortless. And by doing this, by practicing, you switch more and more of your thinking from system 2 to system 1. And the less that you have to rely on system 2, the more impactful your communication will be. So remember, every time you speak English, you're training one of two systems. You either train system 2, which is the slow, perfectionist brain that tires you out, or you can choose to train system 1, the intuitive, fluent one that frees you. In your career, in the Western workplace, I hope that you can speak freely and lean on system 1. Okay, it's time for Melon Break. It's time to 吃瓜. And in this edition of Melon Break, we're going to talk about good genes, bad press, and the ugly secret of going viral. If you haven't heard about Sydney Sweeney, well, let me tell you about her. She's currently the top A-list actress in Hollywood. She's wildly controversial for many reasons. One of the reasons, most recently, is the American Eagle ad. And if you haven't heard about that, let me tell you about the ad. Basically, she wears a lot of jeans in the ad, looking very sultry. And she makes this pun about having great genes, like Jeans, the jeans that American Eagle sells. But that sounds a lot like great genes, Genes, like DNA. And that one little pun turned into an all-out culture war. Like, what I mean by culture war is when, the public fights about social values and identity, oftentimes online. So after this culture war, TikToks called it eugenics coded, as in, what are these people doing talking about white supremacy in 2025? Trump called it the hottest ad ever. Trump. And the stock market loved it. American Eagle shares soared. The brand is back in a big way after many thought it was dead. But Sweeney herself stayed totally silent while the internet fought over her views, her politics, and even her DNA. Now, months later after the event, she spoke and broke her silence in a widely debated interview with GQ. And she basically said, when I have an issue that I want to speak about, people are going to hear about it. And again, controversy exploded. Half the internet called her classy, the other half called her cowardly. Ultimately, while everyone's arguing and getting angry about this, the real winners are Sweeney and American Eagle. Forget about genes, because in today's world, attention is currency. Every brand and personality is fighting for eyeballs. And in that fight, outrage is marketing. Controversy is visibility. So whether you love her or hate her, Sydney Sweeney knows what it takes to be Hollywood's new it girl. An it girl here means a woman who is currently at the top and the center of pop culture attention. The popular girl. Or, as my PR analyst would say, the one that I'm currently coaching, all publicity is good publicity. So, here's how you can use this news at work during small talk. If you're chatting with coworkers, you could say, did you hear about the new Sydney Sweeney interview with GQ about her jeans ad? It looks like she doubled down on her position and the debate is heating up again. Or if you're chatting with your boss, you could say, it's a perfect case study of the attention economy. There was a huge amount of backlash, but the brand sales and her own visibility skyrocketed. Controversy is a new form of currency. Day Up is written, produced, and hosted with love by me, Jonathan Lee. If you want to support high-quality, free podcasting for Chinese professionals, please like and review this podcast. It would mean so much to hear from you. That's all for today. 下次再见，职场小伙伴们。